the news hit Washington like a thunderclap. Just moments ago, former President Donald Trump issued a stunning demand, an immediate massive tariff on all foreign steel. He called it a matter of national security, declaring American steel the backbone of the nation. His words were an ultimatum, not a suggestion, a direct challenge to the current administration. Trump's message blared across every platform, invoking images of shuttered mills and forgotten workers. He promised a return to American industrial might, speaking directly to the heartland and Rust Belt. This was about more than economics. It was about pride and survival. The timing was no accident. Trump's demand landed in the middle of delicate trade negotiations. It was a move designed to force the administration's hand to agree with his protectionist stance or face political fallout. The world watched, waiting for President Carney's response. The implications were enormous. A massive steel tariff could protect some American jobs, but would also raise costs for industries like automotive and construction. The global trade balance teetered on the edge. Trump's demand wasn't just policy, it was a lit fuse on an economic powder keg, and Detroit, the city built on steel and cars, sat right on top of it. The stakes were clear. This was a battle for the future of American industry. The shockwave was immediate, and the aftershocks would be felt far beyond Washington. The question now, would the administration take the bait or hold the line? The next move would determine the fate of Detroit, and perhaps the nation. The countdown had begun. The White House wasted no time. President Carney's answer was swift and unequivocal: no. Through his press secretary, Carney called Trump's proposal reckless economic vandalism. He accused Trump of playing politics with American livelihoods. The administration warned that tariffs would spark a trade war, hurt consumers, and isolate the U.S. from its allies. There would be no negotiation. This was more than a policy dispute. It was a clash of ideologies. Carney's team championed global cooperation and free trade, arguing tariffs harm those they claim to protect. They painted Trump's demand as a step backward, a return to failed policies. The press secretary made it clear, the White House would not be bullied. The rejection set the stage for a monumental political battle, two visions for America's future. One saw strength in tariffs and walls, the other in bridges and trade. Carney's team knew they'd be attacked as globalists but stood firm. They argued the economy was finally recovering and a sudden tariff would undo that progress. The message, we will not be held hostage. The door was not just closed, it was barricaded. The battle lines were drawn. Detroit was about to become the epicenter of this fight. The stakes had never been higher. The nation braced for impact. Detroit felt the shock instantly. The city's fragile recovery was suddenly at risk. For Detroit, this wasn't abstract politics, it was survival. The clash in Washington sent markets into a tailspin. Automotive stocks plummeted before sunrise. Companies tied to Detroit's manufacturing base saw their value slide. Investors, spooked by uncertainty, sold off in droves. The city's foundation, cars and steel, was under threat. Trump's tariff would raise steel costs, making American steel competitive but cars more expensive. Carney's rejection signaled no government rescue for steel mills. Both industries were left in limbo, caught in a political crossfire. The cautious optimism in Detroit evaporated overnight. Memories of past recessions and factory closures resurfaced. The city's mood shifted from hope to dread. The fight in Washington had real consequences on Detroit's streets. The Motor City, once a symbol of American strength, now faced a new crisis. The wheels that built America threatened to come off. Detroit was caught in a no-win situation. The city braced for the fallout. The uncertainty was suffocating. The auto industry was the first casualty. Detroit's big three, Ford, GM, Stellantis, were thrown into chaos. The political standoff made supply chains unpredictable. Steel is the skeleton of every vehicle, and uncertainty made planning impossible. Major auto plants announced temporary production halts. The reason: supply chain chaos and price volatility. Assembly lines fell silent. Thousands of workers were told to stay home. This wasn't just about steel, it was the entire manufacturing ecosystem. Smaller suppliers lacking cash reserves were hit even harder. When big plants shut down, orders to smaller companies stopped, triggering a domino effect. The decision to pause production was defensive, but the impact was devastating. The auto industry, having survived a pandemic and chip shortage, was now paralyzed by politics. For workers, it was a sudden shock. Steady paychecks vanished overnight. The assembly line had stopped, and with it, the economic engine of countless families. The silence in the factories echoed across the city. Detroit's symbol of strength was now a symbol of vulnerability. The uncertainty rippled through every neighborhood. The city's heart had skipped a beat. If auto plants were Detroit's heart, steel mills were its bones. Trump's tariff promise had given steelworkers hope, a chance to compete. Carney's rejection extinguished that hope overnight. The message "no government rescue, compete on a tilted global market." The psychological blow was immense. With auto plants halted, demand for steel vanished. Mills began powering down furnaces, a costly, desperate move. Shutting down a blast furnace signals a long-term shutdown, not a pause. Cold furnaces became a heartbreaking symbol for the community. Generations had worked in these mills. Now, they stood silent. The political battle in Washington had turned hope into despair. Detroit's steel backbone was crumbling. The shutdowns hit hardest at Detroit's kitchen tables. One day, families had steady jobs. The next, uncertainty. Texts spread, "Don't come in tomorrow, the line is down." Thousands lost their primary income overnight. The human cost anxiety, fear, and sleepless nights. The promise of a good manufacturing job, the region's bedrock, was cracking. Union leaders tried to reassure, but had few answers. Unemployment benefits were a temporary fix for a growing crisis. Workers felt like pawns in a political chess game. Detroit's story is one of resilience, but this test was severe. Young workers questioned their future, older ones saw retirement plans vanish. The city was united in vulnerability. Their fate was being decided far away. The economic shockwave spread beyond factories. Local diners and coffee shops lost their morning rush. Lunch spots saw reservations vanish as corporate budgets tightened. The ripple effect was immediate. Manufacturing jobs supported an entire ecosystem. Car dealerships felt the pinch first. Sales appointments were canceled. People delayed major purchases, confidence evaporated. Local governments braced for falling tax revenues. Plant shutdowns meant less money for schools, police, and roads. City planners shifted from growth to crisis management. The crisis exposed Detroit's economic fragility. Despite efforts to diversify, the city was still tied to manufacturing. When auto and steel faltered, the whole region suffered. A targeted crisis was becoming a regional emergency. Detroit's economic crisis became a political firestorm. Trump and allies pointed to silent factories as proof of their argument. Carney had abandoned workers. Their message, "We tried to protect you," they refused. Carney's team blamed Trump for creating chaos for political gain. The community was divided. Some saw tariffs as salvation, others as a dangerous gamble. Union halls became battlegrounds for heated debate. This was more than an election fight, it was a battle for the Rust Belt soul. Should America protect its industries or embrace globalization? Detroit, with its history of highs and lows, was now the arena. The fallout would shape politics for years. The stakes, America's economic identity. As dawn breaks, Detroit faces a fog of uncertainty. Assembly lines are quiet, steel mills cold, workers at home. The political stalemate in Washington shows no sign of ending. Detroit is the primary casualty of this ideological war. The question, is this a temporary storm or a new chapter of decline? The longer the shutdowns, the deeper the pain for families and businesses. Community organizations scramble to provide a safety net. The immediate challenge, restore stability and predictability. This crisis is a wake-up call. Detroit must diversify its economy. Leaders will push harder for new industries, tech, healthcare, green energy. The goal, resilience against future shocks. Detroit's future, as always, rests on its people's grit and innovation. The path forward will be hard, but the city has survived worse. The world is watching, waiting to see if Detroit will rise again.